With new Chips Ahoy Thins, we didn't stop at thin, we put an exclamation point on it. And we didn't stop with thin chocolate chip cookies, we made a thin cinnamon sugar variety too. And then we did a victory jig and then we stopped. But not really, still going. New Chips Ahoy Thins.
Blog Talk Radio.
To another conversation. This month, we have Imani Kali Nyah. She is the executive producer of African Worldview, a weekly television program, president of the Chicago office of the Emperor Haile Selassie Memorial Association, president and CEO of Roots International Alliance Incorporated. For 23 years, she has been this event was created. Roots International was created. Currently, Imani is working with Haile Selassie, the First Foundation in Addis Ababa, to raise funds to rehab and reconstruct of the library in His Majesty's birthplace, Ezra Goro, Ethiopia, which will provide the library, research, and internet service for the towns surrounding the area. Imani has established a Chicago office of the Haile Selassie First Association in Chicago. In the near future, the association will help promote its Help Wanted ad for archive, construction professionals, electricians, and so on. For those who are interested in volunteering to work on the library project in Ethiopia, call 773-268-1000 or send your emails to rootsinternational@sbcglobal.net. The upcoming programs and activities will be the Friends of Rastafari, which is composed of members of the Rastafarian community in Chicago and are presenting the Grand Earth Day celebration, family reunion, and picnic for Emperor Haile Selassie's 119th Earth Day on July 23rd, 2010, from 12 to 9. The event is free to the public and includes traditional Nyabingi drumming, singing, reggae music, poet, children dancing company. For more information on this celebration, you may call 773-288-7718. As usual, my co-host, Chris Staley, is a blogger at Jamaicans.com, and his blog is called Me Thinking, Are You? So, Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Janice, and welcome, Imani, to our call this evening. It's good to have you.
Oh, good evening. Oh, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thank
Great.
you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. There's a lot of affinity with Ethiopians and Jamaicans, and we'd like to see how we strengthen our understanding. First, we'd like to get to know you a little. Where are you from, and what's your connection with Jamaica?
Actually, I was born in the United States, and my grandfather was from Jamaica.
Okay.
And by way of India, I believe, and according to the history I get from the elders in the family. And he migrated to America in the South and was a very successful farmer, veterinarian, and had, quite a lot of land, over 300 acres of land in 1929, which was unusual in the racist South. And so my father, when I was born, taught me everything I know about His Majesty because his father was in the Ethiopianist movement. And so my introduction to the history of Ethiopia and His Majesty came at a very early age.
Oh, that's great. I said that there are many stereotypes and perceptions on Rastafarianism, and we just want to make sure that our audiences are pretty informed. Could you give us your definition of what Rastafarianism is all about.
Well, Rastafari, it's to me that we're African-centered Christians. We believe the same thing as other Christians. We're just not Eurocentric or African-centric in that we believe that Africa is the Holy Land, Ethiopia is the Garden of Eden, and the throne of David, the Solomonic dynasty, all of that history is indigenous to Ethiopia from the beginning of time. In Genesis 2:13, it teaches us that Ethiopia has been around since the beginning of time, and it is a geographical location of the Garden of Eden according to the ancient geography.
Okay, bring us up to speed. Give us a sense of Rastafarianism. How many communities or congregations are and where they're located?
Actually, there are different versions of Rastafari. Some of us may be Nyabingi, some may be Bubba Dread, some may be 12 Tribe. I happen to embrace Nyabingi, which is a traditional house, drumming and chants. And no matter what house you belong to, everybody likes to go to the Bingi. And there are different levels of thinking about His Majesty, but the foundation of the way of life, which some people might call belief, but we have knowledge, so we don't believe. We know the foundation of Rastafari is the fact that His Imperial Majesty inherited the throne of David November the 2nd, 1930. This is history. It's not conjecture. It's in the history books. It's in newspapers from the time, and that he is from the 4,000-year-old line of ancient king and kings from ancient Ethiopian pharaohs all the way down to King David, King Solomon, and Queen of Sheba. Jesus the Christ is in his family tree. That is a matter of history.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for enlightening us. And how, your family, your grandfather was the one who embraced it. And what was your personal journey like to becoming a Rastafari?
Well, Rastafarians are born. They're not made. And so I grew up in this, I went to the Baptist church. I was baptized when I was 15 months old. And like I said, my father was a Selassie man and my grandfather and my uncle. But when I remember going to Bible school, and I didn't believe the story of the talking snake because I'd seen a snake in the garden and it wasn't talking. And the other thing is, I asked my mother if there were only two people in the world and they had two boys, who were the people in the land of Nod? And the minister couldn't answer that question, but my father could, based on his knowledge of the history of Ethiopia. And so I withdrew myself at an early age from Eurocentric thinking because everything in the Bible was white: angels, God, disciples, Messiah. But, according to my father, it wasn't right. So I prayed that my father was right. And when I became older in my late 20s after college, I began to really, really search for the truth and to confirm that what Rastafarians were saying is true, and I did. And so therefore, what was inside of me just came out.
Okay. As you said, Haile Selassie is a very important personality within Rastafarianism.
Rastafari is not an ism. Rastafari is not an ism, but it is a way of life.
Rastafari? That's the way you'd like it
referred.
Okay, my apologies.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, help us
Enlightenment
connect dots.
is something that helps everybody to understand each other, so there's nothing wrong with not knowing.
Yeah,
especially if I can share language.
Yeah, exactly. This is certainly a discovery journey we're on. So help us connect the dots and share its importance to your community.
His Imperial Majesty?
Yes.
His Imperial Majesty in this time represents, and his family, because members of his family live. I know some members of his family. He has great-great-grandchildren. He has family members. They still live. But he represents in this time the bloodline, the sacred bloodline of kings of ancient Africa that had the divine right to rule, which meant they were elect by God. And it was during that time when gods actually walked the earth in human form. These Europeans called pharaohs, but they were highly enlightened human beings. According to Genesis 2:13, they established great civilization in Ethiopia. Now, here's the thing. If there was a land of Nod, and the Bible talks about it, there could not have been the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were not the only people on earth. So being enlightened Rastafarians who just don't accept what people say, and we know that the Bible has some misinterpretations, so we interpret the Bible from an African perspective. His Majesty represents to us the truth and our connection from throughout the African diaspora to the Holy Land of Africa, because we are the children of Ethiopia.
Okay. There are some common stereotypes about Rastafari. Are there any you'd like to just make sure that we clearly understand that we haven't talked about so far?
I hate to talk about the negative. I like to accentuate the positive, but I'd like to say that not all Rastafarians wear dreadlocks, and not all Rastafarians smoke ganja, and the Rastafarian way of life, people have come to poke fun of it in the early days, not take it serious, and to persecute it and do all sorts of things to it. But we ourselves, those of us on the spiritual and the mystical path of Rastafari, see ourselves no different than those who were persecuted for embracing Christianity in the early days.
All right.
So,
as you said, misunderstood people usually suffer. There are no others throughout history.
Yes.
People have not. I'd like for you to give us a history of some of the sufferings, and in particular the Ethiopian Holocaust.
Some of the sufferings first began, with respect to the African diaspora, first began in Jamaica. Leonard P. Howell, as they say according to history, proclaimed the divinity of His Imperial Majesty, and he was jailed for sedition.
Yes, you're explaining to us the Holocaust that occurred.
The persecutions in the Rastafarian movement occurred early in the 30s when Brother Leonard P. Howell first proclaimed the divinity of His Imperial Majesty. Some years later, in 1935, Mussolini set out to carry out a systematic mass extermination campaign in Ethiopia with poison gas sprayed from airplanes and other horrific atrocities that were akin to actions of genocide upon the Ethiopian people. We have graphic pictures and even video film from the period that actually shows what took place, and it was just unimaginable. And so having resurrected this issue, it was one of the issues my father had taught me about, and it's something when I was a little girl I always wondered about it, and he had shown me a picture, actually a picture on the front cover of my book published called Italy's War Crimes in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Holocaust, 1935-41. The picture that's on the front cover of that book is of a decapitated Ethiopian soldier, and this Italian fascist soldier is holding up his head, and there are two other Italian fascist soldiers standing around laughing. The most mystical thing about that is that my father told me that I would never see that book. It was taken out of print, blah, blah, blah. And about almost 30 years later, I happened to meet the son of the woman who published that book, and later on, about 10 years later, I actually met the lady whose father was decapitated. He's on my book, so that was a special moment for me. But the Ethiopian Holocaust claimed the lives of more than 1 million people, and it was carried out during the same time as the Jewish Holocaust, and occurred virtually within the same time frame.
Parallel, right.
The question is, why do we know more about the Jewish Holocaust than the Ethiopian Holocaust when they both were carried out during the same time, and they both were carried out with poison gas? So that's what we're dealing with here.
So your exhibits are making sure that the wider community is aware of this atrocity.
Well, we resurrected the issue on the floor of the world community when we first published the book in 2000. We strategically published it in 2000 because we were symbolically knocking on the door of the Vatican and demanding that they pay attention, and we were holding them accountable, and that we were carrying on our Father's work because His Majesty was working on that for some time, and the British betrayed him, and along with the United Nations, they never, ever, ever addressed this issue, but they addressed the Jewish Holocaust. And so through the inspirations that I received from my father, with him having gained my attention from such an early age, my interest in Ethiopia and the history became a life work and a mission. Something that I was so driven. I did crazy things like root up my family, move to Jamaica, not worry where anything's going to come from, just following the mystery, wanting to know, and then being led to that which I longed for so long. So it's really
you're on a journey. What was your time like in Jamaica?
It was like being at home, because where I come from, 2,000 miles from here, was no different. You know what I learned? Country people are the same all over the world, mine.
Okay.
They just want you to be respectful, and they're easy and quiet, and don't make fuss, and do the right thing. Be fair.
And what would you say the treatment is of people you mentioned in the 30s, or the leadership was persecuted? How would you qualify the treatment in a contemporary setting?
We're still persecuted. You don't see us working in the bank in Jamaica, do you? We're not at National Bank. We're not here. We're not there. The only time you see us in music. And we still don't have schools for our own children. Our history is not taught in the schools. And from the way I understand it from some of the brethren and sisters in Jamaica, Jamaica still has a long way to go with respect to human rights for Rastafarians at home and abroad.
And how are you involved in the political process to encourage that?
I don't touch politics, but as an ambassador of His Majesty, we believe that encouragement is done with light and knowledge. And we represent, I think the best thing people can do is set an example. And simply when we carry our exhibits and our books and we make our lectures, we certainly gain the attention of people in high places. And that's part of the diplomacy. So we call it our mission, our spiritual ministry. And, we're adding music to it, and, and people really listen. We've built a following in Chicago. We've been on television now for over 20 years. And people have begun to wake up and listen to what we've been saying about the House of David, the House of Solomon. We explained to them there were two nations, and they only know about one. There was a nation of Judah and the nation of Israel. And they can't take the history of Ethiopia and claim nobody can do that. The one King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Ethiopian. One conquering lion of Judah, Ethiopia. One Garden of Eden, Ethiopia. And so the Jewish people can't take that. That belongs to Judah.
Okay. Speak, if you could, briefly about your visit to Ethiopia, and what was that like for you?
I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I've never seen so many people dressed all in white dotting the countryside. If I give an analogy, it would be like, imagine, just little, from a distance, it just seemed like small dots all dressed in white. I've never seen so many churches. I visited all the holy places and everything, but what carried me there was the work to resurrect the issue of Italy's war crimes in Ethiopia. And so one of His Majesty's directors actually set the itinerary and planned everything on the ground. So when we went there, we had the support of the Ethiopian Patriots Association, and they actually had a very large banquet dedicated to the works. And it was an honor to meet some of the men who had rubbed shoulders with His Majesty and some of the survivors of that terrible period. And, so what was it like? Again, I say, when I realized that we were at 1.7 feet above sea level, and Ethiopia is the highest point in Africa, when you understand the African geography, going from West Africa to Ethiopia, you start out in the lowlands. And the highlands of Ethiopia is where you find the source of the Nile, where you find the Garden of Eden. So it was a trip of a lifetime.
Great. So the hairstyle certainly gives you some cultural distinctiveness. Tell us a little about the Bobo locks, and how is that different from the other 10 tribes and other sects?
We ourselves, and me personally, as I consider myself a Nazarite from Judah. I happen to be Rastafarian. I don't see any difference in the different houses. I'm just that way. But some of the people that belong to the different houses, they see that. So Bubba Dread has, to me, like Prophet Emmanuel, who they see as a prophet, I'm sure, because of his teachings. We respect that. I respect that. But you still see them at the bingies, and they have their own way of doing things. Pretty much they're, like they're Protestants and they're people like that, But
Right.
for me, that's not a divisive factor. I don't care what house you belong to. We all love His Majesty. We all share love with each other. We're all drinking from the same cup.
All right. If folks would like to learn further to understand, what resources would you recommend that they tap into?
To understand more about ancient Ethiopia?
Yes.
The first I would suggest is that they get the Wycliffe Bible dictionaries, and they get they get a Greek and English interpretation of the Septuagint, which was the first Bible translated by the Greeks out of ancient Ethiopian text. And I would also get books on ancient Kush so they can understand that Kush and Ethiopia is the same land, so that the people won't be able to cut Ethiopia away from her ancient name, so you can know Ethiopia. As a matter of fact, Kush on the ancient map included once all of Africa, but the heartland of Africa, where the Garden of Eden is found, where Ethiopia as we know it today was called Kush, and it included all that land known as Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any parting gems that you'd like to leave us with?
I would love to encourage the public to please go to the website and sign the petition at the Global Alliance for Justice, the Ethiopian Cause, to help us meet our goal of 1 million signatures so that we can knock on the door.
Website.
It's www.globalallianceforjustice.org, or it may be .com.
globalallianceforjustice.org.
Right.
Okay.
Don't put anything behind it. Just put Global Alliance for Justice, and they will get there, and they will be taken to a petition, and it's in Amharic and also in English.
Okay.
We need the support. Also, I would love people to give me a call at 773-268-1000 if they'd like to be a part of constructing the libraries in Ethiopia. In the near future, we will be looking for architects, bricklayers, and construction people that may want to lend their expertise to this particular project.
Imani, I'd like to thank you so much for such an enlightening journey you've taken us on, and we'll certainly be getting the word out. Thank you so much.
Also, if you would like to learn more about Chris Daly's blog, visit Jamaicans.com, and his blog is Me Thinking Are You. To learn more about Jamaican diaspora, visit JamaicanDiaspora.com. And Imani, could you give us your email address?
Our email address is rootsinternational@sbcglobal.net. That's Roots International is all lowercase, one word, rootsinternational@sbcglobal.net.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Stay healthy from head to wallet with Wellness Plus with Plenty at Rite Aid. You can earn Plenty points on hundreds of specially marked products each week on your favorite brands. Every 100 Plenty points equals $1 off your next purchase. Sign up today in store or online at RiteAid.com. And that's just one of the 4 ways to save. Now through October 1st, earn 1,000 Plenty points when you spend $30 on select P&G products. See RiteAid.com and Circular for details.
With new Chips Ahoy Thins, we didn't stop at thin, we put an exclamation point on it. And we didn't stop with thin chocolate chip cookies, we made a thin cinnamon sugar variety too. And then we did a victory jig and then we stopped. But not really, still going. New Chips Ahoy Thins.